Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War event objectives for the Tiger King event, in which the Baihu is added to the game. So let's get into it. As far as the troop, it is an epic, so you can get the yellow-blue arcanes for very cheap if you need to get them, only 200 glory each. As far as the troop itself, though, it is pretty bad. It creates 3 yellow gems, yes, only 3, and that does not get boosted. And then it deals damage to an enemy boosted by yellow gems at a 2-to-1. Meaning for every 2 yellow gems it does 1 additional damage, and it ends up enchanting itself. This might be okay for Arena, but aside from that, it is basically never going to be used. It does have a new trait, though this is a pretty weak trait. It has Banding Magic. Banding Magic gives it +1 magic for each ally that has the banding trait, even with a full team. Having 4 additional magic on this is very weak and is going to do almost nothing, so pretty pointless. And overall is just going to be very useless dead content that you would upgrade simply for getting a star on Shentang, and that is about it. It is a very bad troop. However, what isn't bad is the event key drop table this week. So 2 really important legends are in this drop table. I'll be showing teams for them as well towards the end here. However, let's go over to the Shentang drop table. So if we go to Shentang and click show all, which of course we already have everything. But anyways, everything here except for the following 5, all for the Lazarus Lair and the Doom of Darkness are not in the drop table. However, everything else that you see here that aren't those 5 is obtainable. The 2 most noteworthy ones here are by far Yao Guai and Qilin. If you do not have these, you want to try to get them this week. These are 2 of the best legends that are used for all legend, no mythic teams, or for non-mythic teams that are really good. They're both really solid. Yao Guai is used with Queen Titania, which is another legend, in order to build the Yao Guai Queen Titania builds, and ends up having the highest spell damage of pretty much anything in the game for PvP related stuff. And Qilin does very similar, but for skull spam instead of spell damage, where it goes and synergizes with Divine Ishbala with Qilin in order to build that combination for very good skull spam, which basically forms like a pseudo loop. It's not an infinite loop, but it generally loops long enough to end up winning out the battle. And these are 2 extremely core mid-game, even early late game kind of troops that you want to make sure you get your hands on. And if you are missing either of them, you probably want to open event keys this week until you get, ideally, both of them, as their core components for building a lot of mid-range teams. The other really good troop for that is Tesla. However, Tesla is not available this week, but 2 of the 3 really, really good ones, or 2 of the several really good ones for non-mythic teams are available. So Yao Guai, Qilin, make sure to get them before the end of this week. Highly advise doing so. Everything else you could pretty much just ignore. Pretty bad otherwise. I guess Diviner's okay, but it's a low enough rarity that you're going to already have it by other means, most likely. Aside from that, we do have 10% to all Divines this week, 10% to all Beasts, which has a little bit of overlap. And if you want to farm a little bit of glory, even though you probably got all the glory farming in that you needed last weekend, given that the Vault event just ended, but if you still feel like you need a little bit more, you can just plop a Baihu onto your team in PvP and gain a little bit extra. Not really that worth it. You might as well just wait for the next Vault event. But if you still need a little bit more glory to close the gap, you can end up farming a little bit this week. So as far as the World Lore event, a little bit annoying if you don't have a lot of mythics. It's a yellow divine, and the big issue with a yellow divine restriction is a lot of these good options are all mythics. Like, almost every damage option you have is a mythic. We did show a cheaper team, though. But generally, you're going to need, like, 1 good mythic damage output, like an Infernus or a Ubistet or something like that to build your team around. So if you have any of, like, the really big yellow divines, you're probably just going to build around that, depending on which one you have. Otherwise, you'll need to get a little bit more creative with what you end up building. We do have Divine Ishbala Qilin here, which is a great combo, as I was mentioning. However, the bonus for this week is not skulls. It is spell. So using Divine Ishbala Qilin is not necessarily advised unless you have absolutely no other option. Just because it is specifically spell damage this week, not skull damage. If it was both, then yes, you could get away with Divine Ishbala Qilin. However, it is not, so you can't. As far as the battles that you do, this is a little bit of a weird one this time around, given that it's quite a bit different than most of the other world events, because it's literally just 1 legendary one, the Yao Guai, and then a bunch of epic ones. So basically what you want to do here is always go for Yao Guai when you see it, and try to focus down whichever one of the side missions you end up seeing the most. Overall, it's probably going to give you about an even amount of all, but you do get slightly more for repeating the same missions over and over again. So basically, always take Yao Guai, and as far as the rest of them, try focusing on the same ones as much as possible, and you should hopefully be able to get a decent amount of points that way. But overall, every single other thing counts as an epic, so they're all going to be under the same category, scoring the same points, only gaining more the more you end up doing them. So a little bit of a weird event. Just try to keep track of which ones you're doing, and hopefully you'll keep getting them over and over again, so that you can end up keep accumulating points over them. Overall, pretty weird event, quite a bit different than normal, but as long as you're just always focusing Yao Guai, you should pretty much be fine, as I'm pretty sure all the other side battles will approximately be even as far as how much you distribute each one of the battles. Anyways, as far as stuff that we got going on this week, we got the Tuesday faction of the Labyrinth. I believe this is the first time it has come back around since its initial release. Labyrinth has a very absurdly annoying pure faction. Make sure to kill that tank as quickly as possible, because gosh, is that a faction annoying otherwise. Wednesday, we're getting the Shentang pet bonus. Thursday, we got the Shentang class, which ends up bringing in, or not bringing in, but the monk class. It's a pretty good, all well-rounded class. Biggest issue it has is it doesn't have a half mana start. However, it's really tanky, has extra ways of gaining mana, and it's one of those kind of classes that's a little bit slow to start with, but scales very well throughout the battle. Even though it gets a slower start, it's one of the best classes for very long battles, so worth considering getting a little bit more upgraded. Friday, we're going to be having a bounty event, bringing in another Shentang troop, and Saturday, we do have something for Saturday. We are getting the 2020 Easter pets. I forget exactly when we're getting the 2021 one, but if you didn't end up picking the 2021 up from last year, you'll be able to get that this Saturday. So definitely make sure to go pick up that bunny if you haven't already, since those cosmetic pets are pretty annoying to try to get, since they're pretty seasonal and don't even necessarily come out every single year. Like the previous two events we didn't get the 2021 for, but apparently we're getting the one for the bunny for Easter, so definitely make sure to pick that up, and even if you already have it, you can end up getting more copies of it, of course. Anyways, as far as Soulforge, I actually forgot to check Soulforge earlier. Let's see. Looks like for the most part, nothing too good. However, Infernus, really good, well-rounded troop. More of an early game to mid-game pick. He's generally something that you'd pick up as one of your first few mythics. He tends to fall off a bit in later game because there tends to be better options to burn all enemies. However, he is one of the best burning all enemies options in the entire game, being able to do it as simply as a single extra turn. He has a lot of abilities that work really well as far as how well-rounded he is. He has a nice damage over time. He has a storm that feeds into himself. He has explosion. He has board clear. He has damage that goes past submerge, as well as distributing damage pretty well, so it also kind of bypasses barrier. Overall, very good, well-rounded troop that doesn't necessarily excel at anything, but is well-rounded at basically everything. So great mythic to pick up early on. That burning in particular really good in early game too, how much damage output it gets. It's also something you could potentially build around for the current event this week. So if you've been meaning to pick it up, you want to pick it up for that. Aside from that, everything else pretty bad and probably worth skipping. As far as the weapons are also pretty average as far as what you would end up picking up. You might want to pick up one of the double converter ones. Sky Hero can be okay on occasion. I feel like I personally don't use it. However, it's not a bad weapon. It destroys a column, and then for every yellow gem destroyed, it ends up creating 4 red. The biggest issue with this is it does nearly nothing unless you're destroying yellow gems. However, you can get a lot of value from the yellow destroy, and it does form into some decent teams. The only big issue with it is generally Rope Darts is better than it. Rope Dart will be available in a little over a month, early May. Soon we'll be able to get Rope Dart again, but more often than not, you would just use a Rope Dart. It's also pretty inconsistent in that you are dependent on those yellows, and if you don't have a good column with yellow, you pretty much won't be able to get value out of this weapon. So very situational if it gets really good value or not, and its consistency tends to be lower than other options within the game. However, it does have some pretty high impact that you might want to consider. And while not as relevant, one of the books is available. Of course, we've been using those for Guild Wars and stuff lately. This is one of the slightly better ones. I believe this has Entangle on it. Yeah, it gets to entangle the first enemy when it casts. So if you've been wanting to pick up this book, it is available. Although do keep in mind you might not have the Doom scrolls to go upgrade this book, given that Doom events happen like once a year. It sure feels like happens like 5 times a year, but it's so ridiculously rare now that they're like 11 weeks apart. Hopefully they'll add some other way to get those scrolls into the near future. But still really solid weapon. Not the best Doom weapon in the game, but definitely one to potentially consider if you're wanting to upgrade one of your Guild War Defend teams in order to counteract greens. But that's basically everything that we have for Soulforge then. So let's get over to all of the teams throughout the week, all of which will be in the description below if you want to go and copy paste any of them. So for the World Lore event, there's a couple different ones that you could build around. This particular one I built around Guard's avatar, and I figured we used the new Archdiva as well. So a couple different ways that you could order this, but basic premise is we're going to go and use Golden Cog in order to make Guard's avatar's armor go higher. He has armor boost ratio. He's basically like a Rowan, except full AoE instead of split damage. And basically, we buff up his armor in order to just go win. We'll go get the Golden Cog, which ends up doubling the armor of a ally. You could do Archdiva onto the Guard's avatar, which will not only raise all of its stats, but also give it full mana, allowing you to immediately cast. And then you can end up doubling it again and pretty much be good to go. So that's basically the premise here. And Divine Ishbala just to start everything with 40% mana start, and you kind of just feed everything into Guard's avatar, auto win with Guard's avatar, and go from there. That is the basic premise. Next one is the cheaper version, about as cheap as you can end up getting it. We end up using Dancing Daggers. Dancing Daggers is from 250 wins on the Dervish Hero class, the one from Drifting Sands. If you don't already have it, you can get this weapon 100% for free. It's just a standard nice AoE weapon. There are a couple other options you could use here, like if you have Rope Dart or Dawnbringer or stuff like that. Though Dawnbringer maybe not if you're specifically using Penglong, as it might end up blocking it. But basically, you just want a full AoE weapon here, and this is just the easiest one to consistently obtain, so figured we show it for the cheaper team. Penglong you'll literally get for free just for completing out the Shentan Kingdom, something that you likely already have done. If you don't, it'd be pretty quick to get done. It's just a standard AoE option. One nice thing about this is it does boost based on enchant, and while this boost ratio isn't insanely high, if you bought at least the very first pack, which is very likely the 30 gem thingy, for the world event, you do end up getting an enchant on all allies at the beginning of battle, meaning that he's going to gain some amount of additional damage initially just off the fact that you're going to start with enchant. So a little bit extra damage there. Obviously doesn't do too much, but he does have a little bit of a tank ability. Do keep in mind you will be up against a big Yao Guai in a lot of these battles, so your first two generally want to be your tankier options. It's one of the reasons why I ended up actually shifting Guard's avatar to the third slot here, as you do not want Yao Guai hitting it. So do be wary of that, as that will be one of the bigger scaling battles that you will have to worry about as you're going through the World Lore event. So you generally want your first two to, like, we don't want to put like one of our paladins, for example, in one of the first two slots, since once it loses armor, it loses some of its value. And of course the paladins here are just for poking. They're kind of like a Guard's avatar, except they only hit one single enemy instead of all enemies, which obviously is quite a bit slower. However, they are very cheap at only rare, and they also have a nice air link, which helps feed you yellow, and given that you have to use yellow as your entire team, that is pretty beneficial, since it helps you obviously accumulate yellow mana. Anyways, as far as the World Lore event, not World Lore event, as far as the faction for the Labyrinth on Tuesday tomorrow, you will be able to use Tesla. So if you have Teslas, you can literally just run that through the entire thing. Tesla, of course, being one of those other really good legends that kind of just scale through everything. Really insane damage. Absolutely wonderful for Delve, since it does have upscaling based on stats. All the armor within play ends up doing additional damage based on. So as the enemy has higher armor, you also do higher damage. So it ends up working out quite nice. As far as the Peer faction, this is definitely one of the more annoying Peer factions. Main piece of advice is to go and kill the enemy's Horned Guardian with absolutely everything you have. The best way to do this is with double Mekatar, due to the fact that it has a chance to silence and you can just focus down all the damage. But main thing that you want to do is kill Horned Guardian. As soon as you kill Horned Guardian, you basically win. Because as long as your Horned Guardian is alive and their Horned Guardian is dead, you basically auto-win, simply by Horned Guardian being so absurdly hard to kill within the context of this faction, to the point where as long as your Horned Guardian lives and theirs dies, you basically auto-win the entire faction. So use everything you can once you get to that final battle to kill and silence the enemy's Horned Guardian, and as soon as it dies, you essentially auto-win. It's just a matter of constantly casting your own Horned Guardian until you end up winning. You could go with a +2 green, +2 red. However, I did find it a little bit better to focus on the Mekatar, as it's a lot more important to kill the enemy's Horned Guardian than it is for your Horned Guardian to cast more often. So you mostly just want to focus on getting your Mekatars up, completely kill the troop out, and then you win. That is basically the game plan there. Anyways, as far as the Monk class, a couple different options here, but basic premise is you can use Diviner in order to feed into a yellow weapon. You can do a Dawnbringer here. You can do the weapon I mentioned earlier. I'm just showing this since it's the cheapest option, the Drifting Sands ones from 250 wins on Dervish, and any other full AoE. As long as it's a full AoE yellow, you'll pretty much be good to go. There's no links here, so you can't go with like the 3-link kind of combo, but you can just use a Diviner, get it up quickly, and go from there. We also have Tulios there, just in case you get excess yellow. You can end up doing it to feed additional mana back into your weapon, if you so choose. Anyway, so the Yao Guai Queen of Tanya teams, these of course are nothing new, but these are pretty core, decent teams that have been meta for upwards of a year, 2 years, 3 years. pretty much since they have existed, they have been very strong teams that have kind of just always been the staple for like mid-game as you progress through the game. These are teams that don't require a single mythic that are really good at PvP as well as just generally throughout the game. But they're primarily used for PvP-like situations since neither of these particularly have anything that upscales, so they can't really do like delves or certain events like that. But as far as this team, it is Flamer, or if you don't have Flamer, use their Skia Crown or some other alternative. Yao Guai, Child of Summer, and Queen Titania. Tapon used to be used here, however, Child of Summer, since it got added, is a better option in this particular team. So the basic premise is Child of Summer has Empower, it also has Red Storm, and converts brown to red. This then feeds into Yao Guai and ideally Queen Titania. Your Yao Guai then converts all the purple into red and ideally gets an extra turn based on the amount of reds that Child of Summer just helped, plus the Red Storm that you have. This then gets that convert. You probably got Yao Guai and Queen Titania back up. If there's 13 plus reds on the board, Queen Titania can cast literally for free. Even if she's not casting and doing literally nothing, she's at least still doing Fairy Fire. Fairy Fire does 50% additional spell damage, which will help Yao Guai keep doing more damage. And then you use your weapon to ideally accumulate more weapon. In this particular instance, something like Flamer or Urskia Crown is normally used due to their capability of creating 10 or 9 reds respectively. And then they can feed right back into the fact that you have a Red Storm combined with the fact that Yao Guai and Queen Titania can just go crazy off of reds. And you basically just keep doing that over and over again. It's not an infinite loop, but its damage output is very quick once it gets rolling. Similarly, not exactly an infinite loop, but it tends to get enough damage down before the loop stops that it generally ends up winning within that time. But Rope Dart, Divinish Bala, Qilin, and Moon Rabbit. This team can be replaced as far as the weapon or the Empower. Like you could go Mercy instead for your Empower. You can also go pretty much any weapon here, as the main core aspect is obviously the Divinish Bala, Qilin. The weapon's more so just here for support. But the basic premise here is Divinish Bala. You actually cast Qilin first, even though you had the Divinish Bala before it. Mostly because you want to cast the Qilin initially, but then keep casting Divinish Bala, so a little bit better to have her a little bit further forward. But anyways, he converts all purple gems to red and then all browns to skulls. This is particularly noteworthy in that it is purple to red in the sense that you then do Divinish Bala, which transforms all those reds into skulls and then greens into yellow. And then that green into yellow feeds right back into itself, which ideally cleared enough board that you could just recast. Otherwise, you could still just do Rope Dart or whatever else you have there. And you basically just keep casting it over and over again, spamming Divinish Bala, Qilin, using your weapon either for mana accumulation or to focus them down, in this case to focus them down. And Moon Rabbit or Mercy is mostly just here for the mana accumulation. Either or ends up working. The main reason why Moon Rabbit is normally used is it's converting a color that you don't necessarily need as much. If you're converting away something like purple, you're blocking the fact that you have purple to red convert, as well as the fact that Divinish Bala technically needs purple. However, if you're converting away something like blue, it's not as bad at affecting them. So Moon Rabbit tends to be a little bit more popular. The other benefit of Moon Rabbit is it does have the Bless. So unlike Mercy, which just does the cleanse and then it goes away, this has a lingering Bless essentially, or Bless lasts until you act out of it. So it'll last for more than one turns in many situations if you're not necessarily looping, which can help if they have spammable freeze or entangle or stuff like that. So there are a few instances where you end up using that instead, but you're mostly doing it because of the convert color more so than the after effect that it has on it. But yeah, definitely worth considering getting Qilin and Yao Guai. Both really solid teams that if you haven't tried before are definitely worth building towards. Even if you don't have the other components yet, at least you could get these 2 components now and then wait until the other ones related to the team end up rolling back around. But anyways, guys, I'll wrap it up for this video. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. We'll, of course, be streaming tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we do every single night, going over all of the chapter tasks and all that. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave them below, and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye, everyone, and thanks for watching. Have a wonderful week.